AITA for refusing to let my mom move in after she called my wife temporary. It started with a phone call I didn't expect and honestly didn't want. I was sitting at my desk late one night, half asleep, trying to finish an overdue report, when my mom's name lit up my screen. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, not since the argument at Christmas that left my wife, Emma, crying in the car all the way home. Still, guilt is a powerful thing, so I picked up. "Hi, Mom," I said cautiously. Her voice cracked. "Hi, sweetheart, I need to talk to you." There was something in her tone I hadn't heard before, desperation, and for the first few seconds I thought she was sick or hurt, but then she said, quietly, "I can't afford my rent anymore. I need a place to stay." I froze. It wasn't that I didn't care. It's just that the last time my mom was in our house, she called my wife temporary. Literally. We were all sitting at the dinner table and she'd been drinking. Not much, but enough to loosen her filter. She smiled at Emma across the table and said, "You're a sweet girl, honey. But you know how first wives are. They never last." Emma dropped her fork. I laughed awkwardly, thinking maybe I'd misheard her. "What did you just say?" Mom chuckled. "Oh, come on. Don't act so shocked. You know how you are, Mark. You fall fast, burn bright, and move on. I just hope this one doesn't take it too hard when it ends." Emma's face went pale. "Mom," I said through gritted teeth, "Emma is my wife. We've been married for 5 years." "I know, dear," she said breezily, waving her hand. "But you were married to Ashley for 3, remember? Things happen. People change. You're young. Don't tie yourself down too tightly." The rest of the dinner was silent. Emma excused herself halfway through dessert, and when I told my mom how out of line she was, she laughed again and said, "I'm just being honest. Don't be so sensitive." That night, Emma told me she didn't want my mom in our house again. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even for coffee. And I agreed. So now, 3 months later, my mom was asking to move in. She said her lease was ending, her job had been cut back, and she couldn't keep up with the bills. I listened quietly, torn between compassion and memory. When she finally stopped talking, she said softly, "I know you're married now, and I know Emma probably doesn't like me very much, but I'd stay out of your way. I just need a few months to get back on my feet." My stomach twisted. "Mom," I said carefully, "you'll need to talk to Emma about it." Her voice hardened instantly. "What's there to talk about? I'm your mother." I sighed. "And Emma's my wife. This is her home too." She made a sound of disgust. "Her home? Please. You've been married, what, 5 years? That's nothing. She'll be fine. You can't just abandon your mother because your flavor of the month doesn't like me." The anger that had been simmering for months finally boiled over. "She's not a flavor of the month, Mom. She's my partner. And you're right. I can't abandon you, but I also can't let you move into our home and disrespect her under our roof." She went quiet for a long time. Then she said in the coldest voice I've ever heard from her, "You'll regret this. Blood is forever. Wives aren't." I told Emma what happened later that night. She didn't gloat. She didn't even look relieved. She just said quietly, "I'm sorry it came to that." "She called you temporary again," I admitted. Emma gave a small, tired smile. "She's never going to like me, Mark, and that's okay. But I can't live with someone who thinks our marriage is just a phase." I nodded. "You won't have to." A week passed before my mom reached out again. This time, it was a group text to meet my sister and my aunt. I guess I know where I stand. Imagine raising a son for 30 years just to be replaced by some woman who probably won't even stick around. My sister texted privately right after, "Mark, you could have at least let her stay for a month. She's our mom." But here's the thing. My sister doesn't live with her. She doesn't know what it's like to constantly navigate my mom's passive-aggressive digs, her jealousy, her way of twisting affection into guilt. When Emma and I first got married, Mom made a toast at our wedding reception that ended with, "Let's hope this one lasts longer than the last." People laughed. Emma didn't. "When we bought our house," she said, "don't decorate too much. You never know where life will take you." And when we adopted a dog together, she said, "At least one of you will stick around when things go bad." It was always a joke, always a laugh, always, "Oh, you know how she is." But I did know how she was, and I was done pretending it didn't hurt. 2 weeks later, she showed up at our door with suitcases. It was raining. She stood there in a heavy coat, mascara smudged, and said, "I didn't have anywhere else to go." Emma froze beside me. I looked at my mom. shivering, vulnerable, and yet somehow still defiant. "He'll find you a hotel," I said gently, "and he'll cover it for a few weeks until you figure things out." Her expression changed from heartbreak to fury in a second. "You'd rather pay a stranger than open your own door to your mother," she hissed. I swallowed. "Yes, because a stranger doesn't insult my wife in her own home." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. And maybe she didn't. That night, I wired her money for a short-term rental. She refused it. Instead, she called my aunt, who called my sister, who called me, accusing me of being cruel and ungrateful. But none of them were there when my wife sat on the couch trembling, saying she felt like she'd never be enough for my family. None of them saw the nights I held her as she cried, wondering why every achievement, every kind gesture, every effort was met with another jab from my mother's tongue. And none of them understood that this refusal wasn't about revenge. It was about finally protecting the person who had never stopped protecting me. It's been 6 weeks now. My mom still won't talk to me. My sister says I'm dead to her. My aunt says I've let a woman ruin my bloodline. But every morning, I wake up next to Emma and the air in our home feels lighter. No tension, no fear of the next comment, just peace. Sometimes peace feels lonely, but it's still better than guilt wrapped in manipulation. Last night, I got a text from my mom. "I hope you're happy. You chose her over your own mother." I stared at it for a while before replying. "I didn't choose her over you, Mom. I chose respect, something you never gave her." She hasn't replied, and maybe she never will. But for the first time in my life, I think I'm okay with that. Because if blood means loyalty at the cost of kindness, then maybe blood isn't family after all. Continuation: the text from my mom stayed on my screen for hours. Her words, "You chose her over your own mother," replayed in my head like a needle stuck on the same note of a sad record. For a moment, I felt that familiar ache in my chest, the one that always appeared when I disappointed her. It was the same ache I'd felt when I didn't get into her favorite college, when I moved out at 20, when I married Emma instead of waiting for someone more serious. I put my phone face down on the counter, but it didn't help. Guilt has a way of echoing even in silence. 2 days later, my sister called. Not to talk, to lecture. "Mark," she began sharply, "Mom's staying with Aunt Carol now and she's miserable. She's barely eating. You broke her heart." I leaned against the wall, pinching the bridge of my nose. She broke my wife's spirit for years, but no one seemed worried about that. "Oh, come on," my sister snapped. "You're overreacting. You know how Mom is. She says things she doesn't mean." I laughed bitterly. "That's the problem. She does mean them. She's just used to no one calling her out. Mark, she's our mother, and Emma's my wife." I shot back, louder than I meant to. "I spent years watching Mom humiliate her, belittle her, undermine her. You didn't see it because you didn't want to." There was a pause. Then my sister said quietly, "She always said you were dramatic." I see what she meant, and hung up. That night, I sat outside with a glass of whiskey and my thoughts. The moonlight painted silver cracks across the patio tiles. Emma came out, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "You okay?" "Not really," I admitted. "It feels like I lost my entire family over this." She hesitated. "You didn't lose them, Mark. They just showed you what love looks like when it's conditional." I looked at her, really looked at her tired eyes. The way she still reached for me even after all the things my mother said. "I'm sorry you ever had to deal with her," I said. She smiled faintly. "You don't have to apologize for your mother's choices. Just don't repeat them." That line stuck with me. Don't repeat them. A week later, my Aunt Carol called, and I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mark," she started sweetly, "your mom misses you terribly. She keeps saying she just wants a chance to make things right." I sighed. She could have started by apologizing. "Oh, honey, she's too proud for that," Aunt Carol said with a chuckle as if pride excused cruelty. "She's from a different time. You know how women were back then. They said harsh things, but they didn't mean harm." "I'm sorry," I interrupted, "but different time doesn't justify disrespect. Not toward me, and definitely not toward Emma." Carol's tone hardened. "You always were sensitive, just like your father." That made me freeze. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, then with a sigh said, "You remember how your father left, right? You always blamed him. But maybe you should ask yourself why. The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. Her words burned in my head. Why he left. For 30 years, I'd told myself my dad walked out because he didn't care. Because he couldn't handle responsibility. Because he chose freedom over family. But what if had been running from her? I found his old number the next morning. The one I hadn't dialed since I was a teenager. It still worked. He answered on the second ring. "Hello, Dad," I said quietly. There was a pause long enough to feel like an eternity. Then, in a voice older, raspier, but undeniably his, he said, "Mark, yeah, wow." He laughed softly. "Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. I didn't think I'd ever call," I admitted. "But I need to ask you something." He listened silently as I told him about Mom, the things she'd said, the manipulation, the guilt, the years of emotional landmines. When I finished, there was no hesitation. He said quietly, "That's why I left." He told me everything. How Mom had isolated him, mocked his career choices, controlled every part of his life until he barely recognized himself. How had tried to stay for my sister and me, but every time he stood up for himself, she'd turn us against him. She was good at playing victim, he said. She'd cry, tell you I didn't love you, that I was abandoning the family. But I wasn't leaving you. I was escaping her. I sat there in silence, my chest hollow. "She still does it," I whispered. "I know," he said softly. "She'll never stop. That's who she is. But you can stop letting her decide who you are." After that call, something in me broke, and then something else quietly healed. I realized my whole life had been built around keeping my mom calm. I'd made every decision, college, job, relationships, with her approval in mind. And when I finally found someone who didn't bend under her control, she saw Emma as the threat she couldn't manipulate. It all made sense. A few weeks later, Mom texted again. "Can we meet for lunch? Just us? I want to clear the air." I hesitated, but eventually agreed. Part of me still hoped she might change. We met at a small cafe near her old apartment. She looked older, thinner, paler, but her eyes still carried that sharp glint. "Mark," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "you look tired. Marriage getting to you already?" I bit my tongue. "Mom, you said you wanted to talk." She nodded, pretending to look remorseful. "I just want my son back," she said softly. "I hate that we're like this. I miss you. I miss us." It sounded sincere, almost. Then she added, "If only that woman would stop coming between us." And there it was. I took a deep breath. "Mom, Emma isn't the problem. You are." Her face froze like she couldn't comprehend it. I continued, voice steady, "You've spent years tearing down the people I love, pretending it's honesty when it's cruelty. You don't get to insult my wife and then demand my loyalty." Her eyes narrowed. "You're just like your father, weak." I almost laughed. "If being weak means breaking free from your manipulation, then yeah, I'm proud of that." She slammed her hand on the table. "I gave you everything, and you've been collecting interest ever since," I said quietly. For the first time, she had no comeback, just silence. I stood, left a few bills on the table, and said, "I love you, Mom, but I can't keep bleeding for someone who enjoys watching me hurt." Then I walked away. It's been 3 months since that meeting. My mom hasn't reached out again, though my sister still sends guilt-laced texts every few weeks. But something's different now. The silence doesn't hurt anymore. Emma and I started therapy together, not because of my mom, but because we realized we needed to rebuild after the years of damage she caused. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living for me. Sometimes, when I look at my phone and see my mom's contacts still there, I feel a pang. Not of guilt, but of grief. Grief for the mother I wish I'd had. The one who could have loved without control, guided without guilt, and accepted without competition. But I also feel gratitude for Emma, for peace, and for finally choosing a family that doesn't make love a transaction. Maybe one day my mom will truly apologize. Maybe she won't. Either way, I'm done waiting for love to look like pain, because I've learned something important. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop coming home. Part of the reckoning, it was almost 3 years later when the call came. I was in the middle of folding laundry when my my phone rang. The caller ID said Mom. For a fraction of a second, my heart raced, then I remembered the countless times ID tried to let her in, only to have her crush anyone I loved. I almost didn't answer, but something in the voice that came through made me pause. Mark, she croaked. It wasn't her usual sharp, commanding tone. It was weak, fragile, broken in a way ID never heard. Mom, I said carefully. I don't have much time, she whispered. I need to see you, please. I stared at the phone. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately. Another part, a much quieter part, wanted to rush to her side. When I arrived at the hospital, the air was sterile, smelling faintly of antiseptic and dying flowers. Her room was small, the blinds drawn. A few machines beeped softly, counting down moments I could not reclaim. She was in bed, thinner than I remembered, hair a dull gray, skin pale and fragile. And yet, when she saw me, her eyes lit up, a mixture of recognition, fear, and something I couldn't place. Mark, she said, voice barely audible. I was wrong. About everything. About Emma. About you. I shook my head slightly. Mom, I don't need apologies. You made your choices. Tears gathered in her eyes. I never realized how much I hurt you. How much I pushed everyone away. I swallowed hard. The rage, the years of resentment, the pain, they were all there, simmering beneath the surface. But I stayed quiet. I wanted to be a mother, she whispered, but I was selfish. I wanted to be right, not loved. I see it now. I felt my chest tighten. For so long, I had carried her words, her judgments, like armor. And now she was asking me to let go. She coughed weakly, and I gently held her hand. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I just want peace. One last time with my son. I looked down at her frail hand, remembering the dinners, the jabs, the holidays ruined by her manipulation. I remembered Emma trembling and the years of constant vigilance. I remembered the freedom I had fought to preserve. And yet here she was, finally human, finally small, finally powerless. I sat beside her for hours that day, listening as she recounted fragments of her life. Not to justify her cruelty, but to finally confess it. She told me about her fear of losing control, her jealousy of every woman I ever loved. The bitterness she never admitted until now. I wasn't a good mother, she said, voice cracking. I don't expect you to say you forgive me. I just needed to say it. I didn't answer immediately. I could feel the weight of all the things she'd done pressing down, but strangely, it wasn't anger that rose anymore. It was clarity. Mom, I said finally, I've spent years trying to fix your love, trying to prove myself. Trying to be the son you wanted me to be, and I've realized I can't. Not anymore. I have my own life, my own family, and I've learned that love isn't something you earn by hurting someone else. She nodded slowly. I know. I'm so sorry, Mark. I see it now. And for the first time, I felt free. Not because she was gone. She wasn't, but because I no longer needed her approval. The next day, I went home to Emma. She greeted me with a cautious smile. The same one she had the night I refused to let my mom move in years ago. I saw you there, she said softly. How is she? She's human, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. And I'm okay. Emma nodded. I've been waiting a long time to hear that. We sat together in silence, not needing words, because silence now felt like peace. And for the first time in years, I knew we had survived, not because my mother changed, but because I had. Weeks later, I received a letter from Mom. Her handwriting was shaky, uneven, but unmistakably hers. Mark, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you will. But I want you to know before it's too late that I see you. I see Emma. I see what I destroyed. And I'm sorry. All my love, Mom, I held it in my hands for a long time. And then, slowly, I put it in a drawer. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something crucial. Closure isn't about getting the words you've been waiting for. It's about choosing to live your life without waiting for them. I took Emma's hand, squeezed it tightly, and whispered, "We're done waiting for anyone else to decide who we are." And she smiled. Because for the first time, we weren't just surviving. We were living. The last time I visited Mom, she was quiet but at peace. I didn't forgive her in the way the world expects. I didn't let her back into my life. But I let go of the anger that had been holding me hostage. And that was enough. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't saying yes, it's saying no. And sometimes the bravest thing is finally walking away without looking back.